Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I am back to continue my 2020 recap. Yes, even though it is the beginning of March, I've needed some extra time to finish up my 2020 list. Work has been super busy, and I just haven't had a lot of time to edit and record other parts of these videos. But fear not. I should be able to finish all of this up within the rest of this week and then be able to go over my Grammy thoughts as well as to start some new material, because 2021 has already been hitting me with some interesting albums and I am excited to finally talk about them. But first off, we gotta finish this up. Some ground rules before I get into this section of the list. Number one, this is an albums list, not a singles list. No matter how good a single can be, if the rest of the album is not good, it's not going to make my list. This list is based on the whole entire experience, not just one chapter. And then number two, and most importantly, if you don't see your favorite album on this list, fear not. It could mean that it's in my top 10. It could also mean it's in a lower part of my top 50. It could be in my honorable mentions. Or maybe I just didn't have enough time to listen to it. Even though I listened to over 200 albums this year, there's still plenty that I missed. So if you don't see your favorite album, definitely check out my other videos to see if you find it there. And if you don't find it there, let me know what your favorite albums are. I won't be able to talk about it on this list, but I can at least still check it out and give you my opinions on them. So with that out of the way, tonight we are taking a look at the 10 that just missed the cut for the top 10. There are a lot of really good ones on here, so even though they didn't make the top 10, please definitely check these out. Let's start off the list with number 20, and that is Aesop Rock with Spirit World Field Guide. This one is a riser. The first time around, this didn't make my top 50, though it was super close, and the only reason why is because there's so much to take away from this album that on first listen I just didn't get the full entire experience or understood it. But the more that I listened to it, the more it just jammed with me. My first dive into Aesop Rock was either a year or two ago with Malibu Ken, and I just really enjoyed the work from Aesop Rock on there. I love his flows, I love his deranged ideas. There's so many metaphors and similes in there that I just don't necessarily always understand, but I just love where his mind takes him. And this album is a huge culmination of where his mind goes. Spirit World Field Guide, from what you can tell, is an idea of his journey into the spirit world. And there's a lot of imagery about heaven, hell, and ghosts and spectral stuff. All in all, it's just super fun to listen to. It is a little bit long. It's 21 tracks in 63 minutes. However, there isn't a really bad song on here. There might be one that's kind of forgettable, but for the most part, I enjoy just about every song on here. The Gates is such an awesome opener. I really love the imagery for Dog at the Door, which is, it seems like Aesop being kind of paranoid about what's going on outside his apartment. He's trying to take in the scenery of the night and believes that there's a hitman coming out to attack him. And it's just the imagery of him going through that. I really enjoy Gauze. I love the chorus part where it's talking about what he should bring with him. In the first part he says he brought gauze, and at the end of it he says probably need to bring more gauze. Cabrals is awesome. Jumping Coffin's really good. I really enjoy Sleeper Car. 1 to 10 as a interlude is also really fun. It has one of my favorite lines on there. It's basically Aesop talking about him getting older and how his back's been giving out more and more. And he's talking to a doctor. The doctor goes, "How would you rate your pain from 1 to 10? And his response is, "Well, doctor, to be honest, I feel like I lost a friend." So just the idea of like, how much is your pain? Well, it feels like my back has left me. I think that's kind of funny. Side quests, I love the 6/8 feel on there, and I love the pauses during the ends of verses. I think that's a really cool idea. And the 4 Winds as a closer hits so heavy. Front to back, there isn't a song on here that I completely dislike. The only reason why it's not higher, probably one, because as much as some of the other albums on this list, I didn't listen to it nearly as much. Though, like, as I think about it more and more, I love going back to this one. And two, it's the imagery and some of the things I just don't understand much. Like, as much as I love his imagery, I think that there are bits and pieces where I just get lost in what he's saying. Though there are some hilarious lines on here as well that I really enjoy. So, for example, Fixed and Dilated. I really enjoy the lyrical nature on here. It's kind of more tongue-in-cheek with the spirit world and the paranormal and like what he would do if he was ever in that situation where he was the ghost or he was the demon. It starts with a gambit from beyond, and a mile-long list of people I plan to haunt. Hold up. Old heresy headed for disembodiment, as rendered by an excerpt from the Lesser Key of Solomon. You will see him as a vehicle to commander, 2 fixed pupils. All he says is Ian's not here. Pitched it down an octave. I'm gonna take this opportunity to piss and vomit lava while the next is lazy Susaning. Of course, a reference to The Exorcist. I just like the imagery there. It's just so fun, in my opinion. And then the other part of that song goes like 1, 2, undo a divine act. They don't like it when I waltz in and turn wine hold back up. Flying rats in a V over demon country. Organizing, but you probably draw the line at the Easter Bunny. A lot of really good imagery on that song. There's also Kotokushi, which has, again, some more funny lines about the astral plane. Some of my favorites is that floating skull just won't shut up. It's on a business trip from below the crust. I just love the idea of a floating skull just like talking to him and just nagging him along. There's also the line of, it's Groundhog D-Day, Jesus H. I was born on a horse at a steeplechase. My forte's frontline real estate, plus steak and frites. I take bloody as hell. If I burn black, point him at the honey and milk. I ain't sitting while you sully the well. I turn up in a jiff, jackknife when I jump in the pit. 100 hands, 1 million eyes, 2 bleeding gums, I will survive. That last line's rose-colored only for a limited time. It all shifts when you militarize. The idea of using the existential idea of I will survive and knowing that you won't always survive. And then finally, my other favorite lyrics is The Four Winds. It has this funny line about someone not actually being themselves. It starts off with, every day I wake up in a different carcass. If I climb out quiet, I'm miffed before tea. I see no need to initial the tree. I seem to have run out of skin on my teeth. I look like I feel like a fish in a beak. I look like a dick in my picture ID, but also the pic isn't me. I just love the flow there. The other part that I really love is the beginning of the third verse, which is the one with the red cross sprayed on the door and a mountain of mail on the porch. The one with the pit trap cloaked in the grass and the thick black smoke from the cracks. The one with the werewolf chained to a tree and the circle of flames at your feet. The one with the ominous regional lore. Why? Which one is yours? It seems like that part is just talking about the different religious taboos and spells and witchcraft and all that stuff. And I just love the imagery there. There's so much really good imagery on this album as a whole. I can't stress it enough. If you like Aesop Rock, I know he's kind of an acquired taste in terms of his flow and his imagery. But if you can get into that, this is him at his best. I know it's an hour long, but it's just so much fun to listen to. Definitely check it out if you got the chance. All right, number 19, we have Phoebe Bridgers with Punisher. This is one that I've gone back and forth on to how much I actually like it. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Phoebe Bridgers. Her work with Boy Genius a few years back got me really into her and, got me into more of a indie folk phase. I've liked stuff like Way is Blood. I've liked stuff like Laura Marling, Lucy Dacus, Snail Mail. And what I like about it is not just how beautiful and chill all of it is, but also, for the most part, the lyrical content. There's some really beautiful songs, and usually songs that are full of emotional impact when it comes to artists like this. Punisher is no different. I just find a lot of this stuff really interesting. Like, take for example, the beginning of Garden Song. The lyrics at the beginning of the song is, someday I'm gonna live in your house up on the hill, and when your skinhead neighbor goes missing, I'll plant a garden in the yard. Yes, you have DVD Menu, which is also a nice chill opener, but starting that song off like that is just a great way of knowing like just what the lyrical content is going to be on here. There's a lot of songs that are kind of sad, kind of depressed at times, but for the most part, it is a beautiful mix. Some of my favorites on here are Halloween, which is her talking to her significant other, talking about it's Halloween, we can be anything this time instead of being the reality of what we've been, which is not that great. Chinese Satellite is about her wanting to write a song that has already been written and sad that she never got the chance to do so. Moon Song is an absolutely gorgeous and heartbreaking song. From what it seems to be about someone who loves another person so much, even though they might not necessarily reciprocate it or don't have the opportunity to. There's some really great lines, starting with the second verse, which is like, we've both talked about that we hate tears in heaven, but we've acknowledged that it's sad that his baby died. We argued about John Lennon to the point where it made me cry, and I was sad for the whole entire day. And then there's this beautiful, luscious part of it where she's picturing him at her birthday party singing to her with a big smile on his face. And then there's the line of, if I can give you the moon, I would, which is beautiful. You know, it's weird, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but as much as there was a lot of songs about men doing the same thing of like, I would give you the world, you know, even going with Eric Clapton, change the world, there aren't a lot of songs on the female perspective of that, at least from what I've seen, that are, you know, super popular. And just to hear this part from her being like, I would give the moon to you if I could. It's absolutely gorgeous. I also really enjoy ICU, where she's talking about another person that she likes. And one part of it where it's her talking about how she doesn't like his mother and that like her opinions are stupid and stuff like that. It's also, of course, spelled ICU, giving it another dramatic flair. And then Graceland 2 and I Know the End to end the album are gorgeous. I absolutely love Graceland 2. It's very simplistic, but it has some great harmonies. And also, I just enjoy the storytelling on here, talking about someone who's trying to run away and make it at Graceland just to kind of feel something. And then I Know the End, kind of on an existential tone. It starts super soft, but becomes the hardest hitting song on the album and the longest song on the album. Really, really solid singer-songwriter. Just so much great storytelling that sometimes gets a little bit too similar in terms of songs, but hey, honestly, great album. And I know that the third artist from Boy Genius, Julian Baker, is putting out something soon. Bet your ass that I'm going to be talking about that one too, because if Lucy Dacus and Phoebe Bridgers are this good as solo artists, I can't wait to see what Julian Baker does. Check this out if you've been missing some good, depressing singer-songwriter. Alright, continuing on with the singer-songwriter vibe, but more in a country flair. We got, at number 18, Chris Stapleton with Starting Over. Man, I found In My Room to be such a great experience. I've really grown to enjoy a lot of Chris Stapleton, even though I've never been a huge country fan. That's just how good of a singer that Chris Stapleton is, that he stands out the way that he does. And he deserves all the guest appearances on other songs, even if it's on shitty albums like Man in the Woods or the latest Ed Sheeran project. But anyways, don't take that away from just how good Chris Stapleton is. This album, Starting Over, is exactly what the album title is talking about. It's more stripped down and a little bit more straightforward with the material. And even though the arrangements aren't necessarily always interesting, I really enjoy a lot of what's here. I like a lot of the storytelling. Devil Always Made Me Think Twice is such a powerful song about sinning and trying to be more pure, but of course the devil's always getting in the way. Starting Over is a beautiful beginning to this album of starting over and trying to find the newer parts of a relationship. Cold, while it doesn't hit the emotional highs of Love You Either Way, I still love it. I just love the chorus on there. So powerful. Arkansas is just a fun song about Arkansas, though. Do we really need to have songs about states anymore? I feel like there's enough publicity for states, but that's just me. Joy of My Life is a beautiful ballad about his love. Hillbilly Blood's a lot of fun. Maggie's Song, my god, that is such a tearjerker. About his dog, the whole entire life of Maggie. If you need a cry for a second, it's a great song. Whiskey Sunrise, another super strong song on there. And Watch You Burn, man, you feel the anger in that song. From what I'm understanding, Watch You Burn is about the Las Vegas shooter. Man, you can feel it. And that's the best part about Chris Stapleton is not only does he give you great storytelling, but he also channels the emotion so well into all these songs to make it that much more poignant and so much more relatable. Are there some songs in here that I don't like? Yeah, Old Friends, not bad, but I'm just not into the spoken storytelling on there. Worry Be Gone, I like, but it's a little bit more bluesy and it feels a little bit more like a Kenny Wayne Shepherd song than something that he should have been singing. I was just basically waiting for a super awesome blues guitar solo. When I'm With You, I like the idea of it, talking about his middle years and how time is flowing by so quickly, but it's not that amazing to me. And then Nashville, Tennessee, fun ender, but didn't leave that much of a mark to me. Overall, still a really solid album. It doesn't necessarily hit the highs of In My Room, but if you're looking for some really good and bare bones country with great storytelling, check it out. It's worth the time. All right, number 17, we have I Don't Know How, But They Found Me with Razzmatazz. This band, wow, kind of came out of nowhere for me. I had heard of one of their songs when I was listening to Still Feel by Half Alive. It came up on a playlist, Do It All the Time. It like just stuck in my head. It felt like it was kind of this like secret band, especially when it says I don't know how, but they found me. It felt like I was sitting in on a secret that I didn't really know the answer to. When I found out that this band was putting out an album, of course I wanted to check it out. Now the cool thing about this is even though this band is kind of new and not much is known about them, there is still a person on here that you would actually know from another band. And that is Dolan Weeks. You wouldn't know him by name, but he was one of the founding members of Panic at the Disco. And you can definitely see that flair, especially on, stuff like Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, and like that vein of Panic at the Disco, because a lot of this has this like 80s synth tinge with also kind of Queen-esque vocals as well as this alternative dance kind of feel at times, but kind of also like with Mariana's Trench from 2019. I just love the vibrant nature and the solid arrangements from this band. Leave Me Alone as an opener just kicks off the energy so well. Now I want you to leave me alone. It's just so good. And then Mad IQ's great second track. You get a lot of this dance-ish 80s vibe, kind of similar to, at times, Two Door Cinema Club. It just hit all the notes that I needed. From the Gallows has this more of a doo-wop vibe, and it even has a computerized section verse where the vocals are robotic, and it feels like, sometimes how, like, in doo-wop and Motown songs, you would have the part where maybe the baritone or the bass voice would start talking and pleading with the loved one to, maybe not let go and be like, oh darling, and stuff like that. It's that, but it's a robotic voice to continue with the trend of this band. There's also some more jazzy flair, like Nobody Likes the Opening Band, which is just a tongue-in-cheek song about giving the opening band a chance even though you didn't come to see them. I really like Sugar Pills, just so much fun, a song about love, but again, what I kind of like about this band too is there's this flair of kind of like computerized and steampunk where they're taking the approach of love and making it more robotic and more intellectual rather than emotional. So like the idea of sugar pills and like getting addicted to love that way. You're taking one pill and then it's not enough and then you're just swallowing all of them. But there's also some ones that are more heartfelt as well. Kiss Goodnight is a beautiful song about wanting another kiss goodnight before laying off into bed. Need You Here is this beautiful piano ballad with some really interesting chromatic lines at time that kind of feel ragtime sometimes, which is about the lead singer going off to go and tour and leaving their child behind, but knowing that hopefully they would come back at some point and just always being there for their child. And then Razzmatazz to end the album, just talking about painting the town red and having fun. I just love a lot of what this album brings to the table. There's these 80 synths, but there's also musical theater, but there's also jazz and dance hall. Just a lot of really fun and creative ideas. It was almost in my top 10, to be honest. This at first hit my top 10 because like it just blew me away. I didn't think I was going to like this album this much. It has died down a little bit because some of the songs don't end up staying as long or like getting stuck in my brain as much as they used to. But hey, great debut album from this band. If you've been looking for this from the Panic at the Disco from a while, especially with that friggin' atrocity High Hopes from a few years ago, this is what you've been looking for. Check this out. I can't wait to see what they do next. All right, number 16, we have Mac Miller with Circles. This is my first dive into Mac Miller, and I gotta be honest, this was super surprising. From what I understood of Mac Miller, he was a solid rapper that had a lot of adoring fans. I can see, the appeal, though, there isn't much rapping on this album. This is more ballad work at times. Yes, there are some songs that he does actually rap on, but this is a posthumous album, of course, and this album is such an interesting dive into his mindset. It's haunting and beautiful at times, and honestly, like, it leaves an impression. It's 15 minutes long, but it's worth every minute. Good News is absolutely heartbreaking of a song. I know Anthony Fantano put it as #1 song of the year, and I can make a case for that. It's a song about trying to just make it through the day. And everyone wanted to hear good news, because the moment that someone brings up some bad news, then you're not wanted that much anymore. It's also talking about being hard on yourself, why you always have to set fire to something that you create. It's that give and take of an artist, that give and take of wanting to do something in this world, but also realizing that it might just be futile. Even with that, there are some other hard-hitting but beautiful songs, and that's the thing. Even with all the pain on this album, there's so much beauty as well. Complicated is just a beautiful song about, again, trying to just make it through the day instead of like having to think about everything else that's going on. There's that beautiful line that's like, why does it always be so complicated? I'm way too young to be feeling this old. I understand that mindset, even though I'm almost 30. I feel like with my mindset, I've lived twice that long, because I've sometimes feel like I've heard or seen everything, and that's hard. And I can only imagine what he was going through. Man, like, Surf is beautiful. Once a Day is gorgeous. Hands, that's on me. And that's the other thing about this album is, like, I didn't expect Mac Miller to be that good of a singer or that great of a emoter. And there's so much on here that it just flows so well and so beautifully. This is supposed to be a companion piece to Swimming, because Swimming in Circles, and I gotta check that out, because if this is this good, I can only imagine what Swimming sounds like. If you heard about this album but were put off with the idea that yes, this is going to be more of a singing album, just take that notion away. Like, this is worth a listen, especially if you're just wanting to hear what Mac Miller was going through. This is a great way of checking into the idea of mental health. This album does a great job of just peering into one's mind and going through the circles that we all do with people who are depressed or anxious, the thought loops. It's a perfect name for this album. It's beautiful, it's heartbreaking, it's emotional, and it's worth a listen. So check it out. Continuing on the little bit more depressive side, we have at number 15, Hayley Williams with Petals for Armor. Now, I'm not going to talk about the way that this album was dropped. I honestly waited just until the whole entire album dropped, because I didn't want to listen to bits and pieces and then eventually listen to the whole thing. I understand why some people are angry. Why did this album drop in 3 different EPs before it actually came out? I get that, but taking that aside, this is a hell of an album. Man, I know Anthony Fantano talked about this being Radiohead light, and yeah, I see that at times, but you're not giving Hayley Williams enough credit here. The thing with Hayley Williams and Paramore over the recent years is they have changed their sound in such a drastic way from the pop punk to something a little bit more mature and 80s tinged. I absolutely love After Laughter. It was my album of the year of 2016, I believe, 2017. What was so great about it was soaked in this 80s pastiche. There was so many great songs about talking about depression in such a way that isn't really talked about a lot, especially in that community. I commended it so much, and I just love so much of that album. It feels like it's a complete storyline about just trying to get through life and then eventually breaking down and feeling that release of breaking down because you needed it. This album is a little bit less of that rock vibe and just more of that 80s tinge. But there's also just so many really interesting arrangements. Simmer. I absolutely love the shit out of that song. I love the build. I love the chorus line. It is so good. And just like the sparse arrangement of there is just really great. As well as the how to draw the line between wrath and mercy. Gotta simmer, 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 simmer down. Like, great. Great. One of the best chorus lines of 2020. Something that was on repeat for me. Hayley Williams does a great job with chorus lines because Simmer, Hard Times from 2016, those two were lasting songs in my head for weeks. I also love the understated nature of Leave It Alone. The chorus line just keeps building and building, and it just works so well. Cinnamon, so much fun. So much fun. And it's also just quirky. The ooh, ooh, ah. Like that combined with like the actual verse lines where it's very sparse in nature. And then it like eventually picks up with the bass line and the drums. I love how it all melts together, and as an arrangement, it's super fun. It could be a super fun a cappella song. It just works so well. Creeping, not necessarily my favorite, but again, it keeps that tense and slow build vibe. And then there's also some more ones that are just straight bangers. Sudden Desire, Dead Horse. I beat it like a dead horse. I beat it like a drum. Always staying here too long. And it's the idea of her always just being in her head. And it's a fun way of looking at depression, because even with the nature of it, talking just about just trying to get through the day and just trying to stay alive and not trying to do something drastic, you get this part where it's just yeah. It's this weird mix of depressive and fun. I know I necessarily shouldn't be laughing about it, but what I love is just the idea of taking these ideas of depression, spinning it on their head and having fun with it. And Dead Horse is no different. I love the slow burn of My Friend. Over Yet, so much fun. Definitely hits that 80s pastiche so well. It feels like such a great 80s dance song. And I love the chorus on there. I love the verse. Roses, Lotus, Violet, Iris. One of the more fascinating songs that she has ever done. It just feels weird and atmospheric. And I just love the slow build, because even when it gets to the part where she's using her higher register, it's understated and it just works so well. And then I just really enjoy the call and response parts on the chorus. I really enjoy the chorus itself and the harmony parts in there too. Really understated, just works so well. Maybe the ending of this album isn't as great, but still, there's still some really solid songs. Why We Ever, talking about why did we ever fall apart as a relationship. Taken is so much fun. It feels like at the end of this album is where the more happy parts of her life is coming in. Taken is talking about, if anybody wants to know, I'm taken, and everybody wants to say he is too. It's just a super fun and just carefree song. Sugar on the Rim, again, feels more 80s, feels a little bit more Madonna-esque, especially when you get to the sugar on the rim part. Wash My Hands on Bloom has this more funky bass line, also fun as well. And then Crystal Clear, not a bad ender. I know I basically just talked about the whole entire album, and I get it. I didn't get to talk about this album. That's why I had to get it out of me. Front to back, really solid album. I really thought about putting this in my top 10, but when I look back at it, there are some songs that just aren't as interesting on the whole. But man, great debut solo album from Hayley Williams. I'm glad that she continued the work that she was doing on After Laughter and brought it here and diversified the sound and made it more interesting. Yeah, it has some Radiohead tinges. That's fine. It's no problem to be compared to Radiohead out of all bands. I hear some stuff that is very much in Bloomish. I hear some stuff that's a little bit King of Limbs, a little bit Amnesiac at times. But hey, that's not a bad thing. And the thing is, with a singer with Hayley Williams' power and personification, yeah, Tom York is a great singer too, but Hayley Williams is one of my favorite female singers. There was no way this wasn't going to be on my top 50. This album is worth the time it is. It's almost an hour long, but hey, really fun. Check it out if you haven't. I also know that she put out another album in 2021, which I'm definitely going to talk about. There's no way I'm not going to talk about it. Love this album. Check it out. Man, if that's number 15, Jesus, we are into some really great albums. And number 14 is Leanne LaHaves with Leanne LaHaves. Another person that I never really checked out until Anthony Fantano talked about it, and then the albumoftheyear.org ranked it super high. And man, it is all that I've been wanting. Other than like Gregory Porter, I didn't really listen to a lot of jazzy, R&B, soulful stuff. This definitely scratched that itch for me. Of course, you know, you got to start off with talking about the Weird Fishes cover, which, again, after talking about another band that did a little bit of Radiohead, it's good to talk about someone else who did a little bit of Radiohead, you know? This cover of Weird Fishes is a cover that I never knew I needed. What I love about it is it takes that idea of Weird Fishes and then puts it into this laid-back, soulful nature. It starts with the drum pattern of the right, and then it goes into a little bit more laid back. Even though the intensity in terms of the speed is not there, there's still so much power on this song. Leanne LaHaves just kills it on the vocals. And then you get to the I get eaten by the worms and weird fishes. And I don't want to ruin it for you, but the harmonies there are just gorgeous. And then you get to the outro part and there's so much power there. Honestly, on a part where usually in that song with Weird Fishes, I don't even really think about, like, I like the outro beauty of it, but, you know, I never really took a listen to Tom York's lyrics there, but, like, what Leanne LaHaves does in bringing it out, this is a phenomenal cover. But there's so much more to this album than just that. Paper Thin is beautiful, talking about, like, mindsets and negative mindsets and how we're all fighting and, you know, trying to get through the day. Out of Your Mind is this beautiful a cappella intro that I just really love. Can't Fight has such a great groove as well as a great pre-chorus and chorus. Read My Mind has so much beauty, so much passionate beauty in there, talking about trying to have someone read your mind about how much you want them. Please Don't Make Me Cry has a more old school vibe. 7 Times, love the vibe and the guitar work on there. Bittersweet and Sour Flower, great enders to this album. You know, it doesn't necessarily hit the highs of, like, say, an Esperanza Spalding, but man, this is still a really fun album and one where it makes me want to check out more of Leanne LaHaves. So good, so groovy, hits that jazzy R&B soulful vibe that I've been missing all year. Check it out if you find any of those genres pleasing, because this is going to be a perfect album for you. Number 13, with Purple Moonlight Pages from Rap Ferreira. This is my first dive into Rap Ferreira. Again, another person that I learned about from Anthony Fantano, but man, I'm super excited to have checked this out. This is totally up my wheelhouse. This is a mixture of rap and spoken word poetry and jazz, and it just is great. Phenomenal. It is a longer album with 18 tracks and 52 minutes, but man, this is just a chill and interesting vibe. The Quorum to start off with the album, where he's introducing what he's planning on doing on this album, is a great way of just setting the tone. And then Greens is just continuing that vibe, that chill out vibe. I really enjoy Laundry, which is talking about just like his state of mind while doing laundry, wondering like how Chance the Rapper does his own laundry, and like talking about like if you had 10,000 kids there, like how many loads of laundry it would be, and like that would be a lot of gain to gain, stuff like that. Just like a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff. Really enjoyed Doldrums. I love Leaving Hell. That one's so laid back and chill. And that's when I knew I found my way out of this hell. My Idea is a work of art, also great. Mythical, there are so many great songs on here. There's even an awesome collab with Open Mike Eagle on Pinball. I love the flow of a lot of these songs. I love how it like changes between rap and spoken word on a lot of this stuff. It feels so dreamy. It feels so intellectual at times. However, I think what drops it down just a little bit is kind of like the same thing with Aesop Rock. There's some similes and metaphors on here that I just don't click with because I don't necessarily fully understand. If I listened to this a few more times, I bet you this would have been in my top 10. But just where it is right now, it's a phenomenal album. Though it's not my favorite jazz rap album of the year, it is still pretty close. Check it out. Number 12, we have Catatonia with City Burials. This one I talked a little bit about in March. Same thing with one album that hasn't shown up yet, but you probably know will be coming up in my top 10. Two really solid metal albums, and I really thought to myself at that point in time that I could have seen both of them in my top 10. The other one that I'm not going to say just yet did end up being in my top 10, and this was super damn close. But the difference between the sounds are night and day. Whereas the one that we haven't talked about yet is a little bit more in your face. This one is more atmospheric in its progressive metal. When I listen to this album, it reminds me a lot of Emperor of Sand, Mastodon's last album, which I absolutely enjoyed. There's a lot of guitar lines that are a little bit more dissonant, a little bit more downplayed than in your face. And because of that, it just leaves for this really atmospheric and subtle metal, which I don't really hear a lot of. It kind of reminds me of like newer Opeth at times, but it's not like solely in your face. And that's what makes this album so interesting to me. Now you get like some more upbeat stuff like Behind the Blood, which reminds me of Show Yourself from Emperor of Sand. But like even like Heart Set to the Divide, right? It has this beginning that is a little bit more subtle, and then it gets into a really, really cool guitar riff, but then goes back into something where it's just like the bass and the drums and the vocals, and never really get to a point where it's boiling over. And that, to me, is just an interesting idea that I don't usually see from a lot of bands like this. Lacquer is my favorite song on the album. It's a little bit more electronic, definitely much a slow burn, but just really cool altogether. Rain is also just really solid, and The Winter of Our Passing has some of the more beautiful guitar work and just really interesting with the timing as well. Neon Epitaph, Untrodden, City Glaciers. Overall, I just love the whole entire world that this album builds. Like, fuck, Vanishers is gorgeous. It's a slow burn. It features a female singer on the chorus. It just like works just so well. What I just love about this album, other than like its atmosphere, like there's just some unease on here. It just feels not doomish, not blackish. It's not that powerful, but there's this sense of finality. Like this is the winter of someone's years. It feels very bare. It feels very sobering and haunting at times. It was one of the more interesting progressive metal albums that I heard all year. It doesn't really hit you in the face with its progressiveness. Rather, it uses its atmosphere to make so many interesting song choices. It's so weird, right? Because the first time around, I listened to the whole thing and didn't know that the last song on the Spotify was a cover. When I listened to it, I was like, this feels so out of place because it feels so simplistic and a little bit more in your face than everything else on the album. And that just like shows you just how great of an atmosphere this album built, where like one song at the end, it can like ruin the atmosphere. And like the good thing is it's a bonus track. I'm not gonna like deduct points of it because of everything else that's going on. It's really close. It's super close to making the top 10. There's just some stuff that I don't remember as well, and it's just because of how everything interludes on itself. But man, if you're looking for some atmospheric stuff like this, check it out. Super cool. And then finally, number 11, the one that just missed the top 10. It is Igor with Spirituality and Distortion. Now it's weird because the last two times I did these top 50 albums lists, I had two albums that were like amazing, that like if they weren't as long as they were would probably have easily been in the top 10, which was Devin Townsend's Empath from 2019, which was like an hour and 30-minute long. And as good as it was, there were some parts that just didn't feel like they needed to be in there. And then the other one was Heaven and Earth from Kamasi Washington, which, as great as that album is, with something that's over 3 hours long, it was hard for me to recommend. This time around, this album comes in under an hour. It's not the length that brings this down. And honestly, it's like splitting hairs with number 10. This is super cool. This whole entire album is just something that I've never really listened to before. It takes a lot of the ideas that I found out from Liturgy from last year and adds even more to the zany. I never thought I would listen to a metal album with accordion, with harpsichord, with Himalayan chants, with Middle Eastern ideas like this. This album is so varied in its work, in its sound, and it's just super cool. It has electronic ideas. It has all these different glitch ideas and instrumentations I never have even imagined could have ever been in a metal album like this. And because of that, it makes for some of the more interesting songs that I've heard in 2020. You know, if you've listened to black metal and stuff like that and you were like, oh, this feels super similar, this is an album that you need to check out because, man, like, I don't know if Igor does this for like all of his albums, but just to hear this was kind of mind-bending. Like listening to Nervous Waltz and hearing this use of accordion, or listening to Hollow Tree and hearing this use of harpsichord, listening to Camel Dance Floor and hearing these mixtures of Middle Eastern ideas and electronics. It's all super interesting, and it makes for the more standard black metal ideas to feel refreshing. Parping has probably the more standard black metal ideas, doom metal ideas with the screaming and all, but it works because it's a little bit different from everything else. And there are some glitch ideas later on in the song, but like for the most part, it's the most natural black metal song on this album. Man, it's such a really cool idea. And it never really gets gimmicky, in my opinion. It just feels like there's a lot of just really solid ideas. Yeah, maybe the second song with accordion doesn't work as well, but hey, it's just a super cool idea that, you know, just misses the cut just because I think that there are 10 albums that are just a little bit better and resonate a little bit more with me. There are some French lyrics on here which, even though I understand some of it, it just doesn't always fully work with me. And then there's also a little bit more of some classical singing on here which works for what is happening but kind of gets grating at times. However, man, check this out. If you like Liturgy, if you like experimentation with your metal, this is right up your alley. It's going to be awesome. You're going to be like, what the fuck is going on at times? But it's such a cool ride and one that needs to be listened to. And with that, we are done with albums 20 to 11. And again, I have a long ass video to edit, but it was worth it because there's a lot of really cool albums. And man, if like you enjoyed this stuff and you think that this is some great shit, just wait until we get to the top 10 because there's a lot of really good material on there as well. But of course, before you get there, you got to do a couple things. Number one, if you like this video, please give this a like. Number two, comment on what albums you like here, some of your critiques of these albums, or even some of your favorite albums from 2020. I would love to hear maybe your top 10 list. Number 3, share this with your friends if you find that this would be interesting to them. Number 4, and most importantly, of course, subscribe to this channel. That way I know you enjoy what I'm doing and want to see more videos like this, and that way you can also watch the rest of these videos, because you won't know when they come out unless you are subscribed and you hit that bell. I also have a playlist of all my other 2020 recap videos. I'll put it at the end of this video, so if you like this and haven't checked out the rest of these parts of the list, definitely check it out. Definitely worth your time. I'll be back later to unveil my top 10. There'll be a special guest this time around as well, so stick around. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it. Until then, this is The Music Fan, and I'm signing off.